guys, welcome back to my channel. It's Christina, and today I'm going to tell you all about my 34-hour labor and delivery story. Ever since I posted about me giving birth to my son on Instagram, I've received tons of questions from girls wondering what my experience was like in the hospital. If I used a doula, did I have a water birth, did I get an epidural, did I take any pain medication, did I have a C-section? So I decided to go ahead and make a video about what it was like giving birth to my son, which is my first child. Just to give you all some background on me, this was my first child, this was my first pregnancy. So the whole experience was new for me. It was new for my fiance as well. He's never had any children before. So going into it, we kind of had expectations, but at the same time, we didn't really have that many expectations because we had never done this before. I gave birth to my son exactly 1 month before I turned 27. I did have a vaginal birth. I didn't have to have a C-section. That was actually kind of one of the things that I was the most scared about. So a lot of girls, I think, are terrified of the pain of having a vaginal birth and what that would mean, what that would be like, the effects it could have on your body. But that's the way that I felt about having a C-section. I know having a C-section, sometimes you can't control it. A lot of times, you know, it's what's best for you and your baby. It's the healthiest thing depending on how the baby is situated, depending on how your health is during the labor and delivery process. So I knew that if I did have to have a C-section, that it would have been out of my control. But that was my fear, the way that a lot of girls fear the effects of a vaginal birth on their body. I was so scared of having a C-section and the effects it would have on my body later on down the road. Another little tidbit about my experience is that I was in labor for 34 hours. It was quite a long time. I didn't get any pain medication until about hour number 27. So I did feel the brunt of the labor pains and the contractions. So starting out that day, I was hanging out with one of my really good friends, Monica. We were eating brunch downtown and taking pictures and just having like a girls' day. And I was in these super tall heels. They were like 4.5-inch tall heels. And I honestly feel like me having those heels on and being on my feet kind of like expedited my contractions, because as soon as I got to brunch and started walking around a little bit in those heels, I started having contractions and like labor pains, but I didn't know they were contractions. I thought they were just cramps, like pre-labor cramps. So I wasn't worried about being on my feet because I had been on my feet a lot my entire pregnancy at my job. So I was like, oh, this is nothing, but I don't walk around in 4.5-inch heels at my job. So I think this really did it. Especially being, at this time, I was 39 weeks and 4 days pregnant. So I think being that far along and then being on my feet and then having on these heels, it was just a recipe for a labor, basically. So we were brunching and just hanging out, and I started having these labor pains. I was like, oh my gosh, you know, oh my God, my back is hurting. I'm cramping, my back is hurting, I'm cramping. And then finally my friend Monica was just like, should we take you to the hospital? Should we call your fiance? Like, what are we doing? Like, should we even be out anymore? And I was like, oh no, I'm fine, like it's okay. And the reason I said that is because I had been having cramps already when I would be at my job for the past like month or so. So I was like, oh, it's just, you know, it's just happening because I'm due any day, but I don't think it's today that he's actually coming. So I just kind of dismissed my labor pains. I was like, oh no, let's keep brunching. So then we go to a networking event later that day and we have a great time. But at the networking event, you know, we're meeting people and things like that. And halfway through the networking event, I'm like, oh, I need to sit down. Like, you know, my back hurts still, it's killing me at this point. Like my back was killing me. My cramps, I was like, I feel like I'm about to have the most aggressive period ever. That's basically how it felt. And my friend Monica was like, are you sure that we don't need to call Larry? Are you sure I don't need to take you to the hospital? Like, are you sure this isn't it? And I was like, no, this isn't it. Like, not at all. Whatever, I'm fine. I just need to sit down. I'm gonna eat some food. They had some food at the networking event. I was like, let me just sit here, be pregnant, be fat, and just kind of take this time to myself because I was in pain. But I was still trying to play it cool, you know what I'm saying? I still have my heels on and I still was like, I look cute though. I look cute, but I was in pain. So then I leave that event and I had another event to go to. I don't know what I was thinking. Like, I don't know what the hell I was thinking. Because at this point, it was probably 7 o'clock and I had been out of the house since like maybe 1:30. Like I hadn't been back home. I had these shoes on. Whew. I was like, okay. But the reason I go to this last event is because it's my fiance's event. So every month, he and his business partner have an event. It's for like investors. They're into commercial real estate and multifamily. So I was like, okay, well, I'm gonna go to his event. I know he'll be there. So even if anything does happen, at least I know I'll be with my fiance now. And then we can just go home. I can put my feet up, I can relax, I can eat, and everything will be fine. And I'm gonna sit down at this event. So I knew I wouldn't be on my feet anymore, really, not that much. So I go to his event, and as soon as I get there, like I tell him, I'm like, I have been in pain all day since I last saw you. Like my back is killing me. You know, like Monica thought she was gonna have to take me to the hospital. Like this might be it. So he was like, okay, well, let's just, kind of see. And I was like, okay. So we were both pretty nonchalant about it, like just taking it in stride. So the event ends and we go home. I eat, put my feet up, go to sleep. But then later that night, I'm woken up by like cramps. Not cramps, contractions. Like these things were contractions. I was like, I kind of like snapped out of my sleep and was like, what is this? This hurts. This hurts so bad. And it was worse than any of the pains that I had felt the past month that had woken me up out of my sleep. It was worse than the pains that I had already been feeling that day. It was like the pain from my back and my cramps that I had been feeling that day kind of combined and were all just like hyper focused in my abdominal area. And I was, waking up by it. So I'm still kind of like, oh, okay, maybe this isn't it. But in the back of my mind, I knew. I was like, you know what? This baby's coming. This baby's coming. Common sense, even though I had never had a child before, common sense told me that these cramps have progressively gotten worse over the past, 10 hours. So I'm pretty sure this is a sign that the baby's making his way, he's ready for his grand entrance. So the cramps that woke me up started at 12:47. So it was like 47 minutes past midnight. So this is where my labor started because the cramps were at the point where I was having to like breathe through them. I get the pain to pass, I lay back down, and I'm woken up again at 1:08. So the last one was at 12:47 and this one was at 1:08. So I was like, okay, that's 21 minutes. Oh my gosh. These contractions come every 21 minutes for, I don't even know, the next day. So throughout the night, they're coming every 21 minutes. I'm breathing through it. I wake my fiance up. I'm like, babe, I think these are like real contractions or like, pains. I think we need to kind of prepare for the baby to be here soon. I think he's on his way. He's like, oh, okay. Like, he's amped. I'm excited. We're just excited. We're nervous, but we're excited. So I didn't call my mom because my mom was on her way to Florida on a plane. She was staying here for 8 days because my due date was 3 days away. And she booked her flight to come in that night because she wanted to be there leading up to the delivery, and then during the delivery, and then a few days after. So I went into labor at 12:47. My mom touched down at like 5:37. Incredible timing. Incredible timing. Like, I don't know if that was like her grandmother's intuition, but she booked her flight perfect. So the next morning, my fiance and I go to breakfast with my mom. My mom was there now, or here now. And we're at the restaurant just having a good old time, you know, kind of like not really acknowledging the fact that I'm in labor. I was breathing through it. I didn't want to go to the hospital yet. I always felt like I have this theory that if you go to the hospital too soon and you take up a bed in the hospital too long, that they kind of get in a rush for you to leave. And then next thing you know, they're like, oh, okay, we need to go ahead and give you a C-section. This baby's not coming. But really, like, the baby's just moving slowly, but they're just trying to get you at the hospital. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to take my time. And my OBGYN, my doctor had told me, like, when you go into labor, if they're still not, 5-6 minutes apart, take your time. Like, get something good to eat. Enjoy time being at home. Try to tolerate the cramps as much as you can in the comfort of your own bed and the comfort of your own couch, with the comfort of your own refrigerator, as long as you can before you get admitted to the hospital, because once you are there, that's it. You can't eat. You're in a hospital bed. It's nothing like the king size bed you have at your house. So, kind of wait it out as long as you can. As long as everything feels okay, try to stretch that time out before you just rush to the hospital. So we're eating breakfast, and I'm breathing through the contractions. We leave the restaurant and go home, and I use the restroom, and when I look at my tissue from peeing, I see on the tissue that there's a little bit of blood. So I was really alarmed, and I immediately went out into the living room, told my mom, told my fiance. So my mom's like, hey, we gotta take you to the hospital. My mom does work in healthcare, so it was so good to have her there, because I felt like I had my own little personal medical advisor or nurse, before I got to the hospital. So my mom was like, okay, we've got to take you to the hospital. And I kind of figured she was gonna say that. So we go to the hospital, and I'm breathing through it. Around this time, it's 4:00, and we get there, we tell them what's going on. They notify my doctor. They check my cervix, and my cervix, I'm only 2 centimeters dilated. So at this point, I've been in labor since 12:47, so it's probably about 16, 17 hours of labor at this point. So I'm only 2 centimeters dilated. So that gives you a good idea of how long it takes to give birth to your first child. I was like, what? I just knew that my baby was 4 or 5 centimeters dilated at this point. I was like, I've been going strong since last night at midnight. I know I'm halfway there. Nope, I was 20% dilated. So disheartening. They hooked the baby up to a monitor. The baby was fine. The spotting was just because I was in labor, or early labor. So I'm only 2 centimeters dilated. And so they let my doctor know, and they have me walk around the hospital for an hour, because they want to get my contractions closer together. So at this point, I think my contractions were about maybe 18 minutes apart. Nothing too crazy. And they're like, okay, we need those to get closer together. Now, when she checked my cervix, that hurt. And I feel like checking my cervix caused me to have my contractions closer together. So I walked for an hour. By the time I'm done walking, my contractions were 7 minutes apart. 7 minutes apart. They went from 18 to 20 minutes apart to 7 minutes apart. And I really feel like it had nothing to do with the walking. I really feel like it had to do with her putting her hand up there to check my cervix. So she checks my cervix again. The contractions are 7 minutes apart. And at this point, I was only still 2 centimeters dilated. So this is where things got interesting. They're like, okay, well, you can stay. We'll break your water. We'll give you Pitocin. You will have your baby tonight. Or you can go home. And I'm like, what? So how do you know I can have, what if the baby's not ready to come tonight? I'm only 2 centimeters dilated. How do we know that he's not gonna be here maybe like until like 2 days from now? My water's not even broke. So with my fear of C-sections and a lot of like pre-labor research that I had done, I kind of felt like if I take up a hospital bed, they break my water and they give me Pitocin, and then I only dilate to maybe 6 centimeters. In other words, I don't dilate the full amount, and now they've broken my water, so it could be a dry birth if it takes too long to have the baby after your water breaks. I was like, they're gonna hit me with the whole, oh, we might have to have a C-section type thing. And I didn't want that. Like, I knew I didn't want that. So I was like, no, the baby was fine. They had it on the monitor. They saw that it was fine. I was fine. My blood pressure was still extremely low, even during the contraction. So I was like, no, I'm going home. So I'm in the hospital bed with the hospital gown on, take it off, get dressed, get my hospital bag that I had packed. My fiance and I, we go to the car. My mom goes to her rental car and we leave. So my mom goes back to her hotel. My fiance and I go to Wingstop. I had him take me to Wingstop because I was craving wings so bad. And we go home. We try to get rest. My fiance tries to get rest. At this point though, I have not been home on my own with contractions that were 7 minutes apart. So this was an entirely different beast. This was an entirely different situation than what I was used to dealing with a couple hours before when they were 21 minutes apart. So I was like, I don't know if I can handle these contractions being 7 minutes apart. Like, I knew I had to handle it because of what I wanted to accomplish for my birth, but I had to get to like a mind over matter type of mentality because it hurt. They were strong and they were quick. So I was like, you know what? I have the perfect solution. I'm gonna get in a bath. So I run a really warm bath and I just sit in there. My fiance, he goes and lays down in the bed. He is exhausted. So I'm in the bath and I'm in there, guys, for like 3.5 hours. It helped so much. I was able to really tolerate those contractions like a champ. Like, I was just taking those contractions to the chin, basically, in the tub. I mean, if the water got too cool, I would run a whole new tub and I was just chilling. I stayed in the bath for 3.5 hours, but they got down to about 6 minutes apart in those 3 hours. And so the hospital had told me to come back if they were like 5 minutes apart, but I knew I couldn't handle it. I was like, I can't do this anymore. Like, I'm ready to go in. So I felt good. Like, I did feel good. I waited out, you know, about 3 to 4 hours. I cut that time out of the time I'm in the hospital. So I felt proud. I was like, you know what? Yeah, that's exactly what I wanted to do. So I called the nursing station of labor and delivery. They remembered me. I had just been there. I was like, hey, I'm on my way back. They were like, okay. So the car ride to the hospital was the hardest thing. Having these contractions, you know, 6 minutes apart or less. Sometimes they would come, like, I'd have one come 4 minutes apart, but consistently they were about 6 minutes and 20 seconds apart. So having the contractions that close together in a little car, and you're sitting and your body's at this like 90-degree angle, and you can't like bend over, you can't bend backwards, you can't get a massage, you know, you're not in your warm water anymore. It was just so painful. I was like, oh my God. I was like, I'm so ready to have this baby. I'm so ready. At this point, I was like, I'm ready to have this baby. I will say I wasn't the type to scream or anything. Like the whole pregnancy, I didn't really make very much noise. I was just kind of like a complainer. I was just like complaining. Like, oh my God, it hurts. Oh my God, it hurts. Oh my God. Oh my God, this hurts. Like I was just kept saying, oh my God. I tried to stay as calm yet as complaining as possible. To the hospital and I get admitted. I'm in the hospital bed. By this time it's about 12:15 and I asked the nurse, hey, okay, I'm ready. Where's the pain medicine? My contractions are 5 minutes apart. I dilated to 5 centimeters apart. So while I was at home, I was able to dilate 3 more centimeters on my own in that bathtub. So that lets you know how intense the contractions pretty much got while I was in the tub, because I was opening up with no medicine. So they let me know that I could get the IV drip type of pain medicine. So I said, okay, that's fine. So I like overhear the nurses talking and I hear somebody say the word fentanyl and I was like, what? I was like, are you guys giving me fentanyl? They're like, yeah. Don't worry about it. It's perfectly harmless. I was like, fentanyl? I was like, I'm pregnant, you know? Clearly, you guys give pregnant women fentanyl? They were like, yeah. It's actually pretty normal. It's harmless. Don't worry about it. It won't harm the baby. I was like, okay. So they give me the fentanyl and it was honestly the most intense medicine that I've ever experienced, and it did take the pain away, but it didn't last very long. Like maybe like an hour that it lasted, and then I got another dose of it. So I was surprised they were able to even give me 2 doses while I'm, clearly still pregnant. And it did work, but it made me so hazy and things like that. So I asked the nurse, I'm like, hey, like when can I get the epidural? And she's like, we can go ahead and set it up right now. So before they give me the epidural, I have to go pee and things like that. And when I get up from the hospital bed, I have the worst shakes ever. Like my whole body from head to toe, I was shaking. I couldn't walk. My fiance had to help me to the bathroom. Like it was so intense. I literally had like almost like withdrawal type of shakes. Like it was so bad. So they come in, they numb my spine, and they're prepping me for the epidural. For those of you who don't know, an epidural is just a long needle that they insert pain medicine into your spine in between your vertebrae. So you have to sit super, super still in order to not get paralyzed. So yeah, they gave me the epidural, and of course I didn't really feel anything after that. Everything went well, but at this point I had had 2 doses of fentanyl and I'd had an epidural, so I was completely drugged. Like I was so dosed out, it was insane. So time goes by, I'm laying down, I'm actually able to get some sleep, I'm actually able to get some rest. And they had let me know that, whenever you feel like you have to take like a huge dump, that's how you know the baby's crowning. So time goes by, and I feel it the whole time. I'm like, man, I can feel this pressure. And then for those of you who have never given birth before, never gotten an epidural, basically it removes the vaginal pain, but you still feel like this weird like anal pressure pain situation. So I still felt the progression of my baby coming. It wasn't just like this easy peasy walk in the park type situation. So I let the nurses know, I'm like, hey, like I feel like I gotta like take a huge dump right now. I think something's going on down there. And they're like, okay. And she's monitoring the baby's contractions. And she's like, yeah, they're about 2 minutes apart right now. And I'm like, okay, that's pretty close, So time goes by again. They come in, I'm like, hey, like I really feel this, you know, I feel this pressure. And they look and they're like, oh wow, yeah, your contractions are like a minute or less apart. And I was like, a minute or less? You know, like that's kind of fast. So she's like, yeah, we're gonna get the doctor to come check your cervix. So I was like, okay. So I'm thinking, you know, last time they checked, I was 5 centimeters. So I'm like, I'm probably about 8 centimeters now. The baby's probably about an hour out or so. So my doctor, he comes in, he checks my cervix, and he's like, this baby is like here. Basically, he's coming now. Like, he gets ready right then and gets all the nurses ready. He taps my fiance. He's like, Larry, this is it. Like, your son is coming right now. You know, Larry gets up from his little nap. He's like, okay, you know, let me put my shoes on. Let me get ready. Like, he's having to mentally prep. Like, his son's coming, and I'm mentally prepping for the fact that I'm about to have to push. And my mom was like, what? He's coming? When did that happen? Like, everything was so calm, and he just came out of nowhere. I will say, after they gave me the epidural, they gave me a small amount of Pitocin when I was about 5 to 6 centimeters dilated. And I really think, you know, that's what just absolutely sped up my son coming so fast. So the doctor, he's bracing me, he's getting me ready. One of the nurses, she pushes up my back. The other nurse holds my left leg. My mom holds my right leg. Larry is right there on my right side in between my mom and me. And he's like, all right, Christina, it's time to push, you know? So I do about 4 long, strong pushes. And on the last push, he's like, this is it. Like, you know, it's time. Like, this is that last push. Let's get your son out. And I was like, you know, like I can't. And then right when I said that I can't, I feel like I'm imagining something moving down there because I'm not pushing. So I have all these drugs in me, so I think I'm just like hallucinating almost. And then I look up and I see everyone's eyes get so big. And they're like, oh my gosh, because my son had started to move his own way out. I was not pushing, but my son was still coming. Like, and I felt it happening. It was the weirdest feeling. It was just like this big slimy thing just oozing its way out, and I had no control of it. He was coming whether I wanted him to or not. And the whole time I had been pushing, my fiance was like cheering me on and, you got it, babe. Oh my God, babe, you've got to see this. You know, he was so excited. And I know most guys don't really want to see what that looks like when their wife gives birth. But Larry was so interested, and he had been cheering me on the whole time. Like, this looks amazing. Oh my gosh, babe. Oh my gosh. And then when my son started to make his way out on his own, that was when Larry was like, oh my gosh, babe. Oh my gosh. Like, he's coming. He's really coming. And I was like, I know I'm not pushing. I feel him. And I guess I had pushed my son from like his head down to basically the top of his shoulders, and from his shoulders down to his toes. My son just made his way out all on his own. Like, it was miraculous to say the least. So the doctor puts him on top of me. You know, everyone's all emotional, and it was absolutely beautiful and everything. And yeah, I gave birth to my first son, Beckham, at 8:08 in the morning on February 29th. So he's a leap day baby. And now he's a little over 2 months old, and he's absolutely beautiful, amazing. Everything went perfect. I pushed for about 15 minutes. I don't know why I had such a smooth delivery, but I did, and I thank God for it, because that was my first child, and I know things can get a little shaky when you're giving birth to your first child. I was so grateful to have such a smooth delivery. We stayed in the hospital for a day after I gave birth. So after I gave birth, Larry's mom got there a few hours later, and it was so amazing to have her there. And then the next day, her husband came and he was there. So it's just the most beautiful thing that I feel like anyone could have asked for their first delivery. Like I said, I only stayed in the hospital for one day. They wanted me to stay for 48 to 72 hours, but y'all, the hospital situation, I didn't like it. Larry and I were having to share like the one room. Beckham kept crying. He hated the bassinet that they had him in. But then the nurses kept coming in and they didn't want him sleeping in the bed with us because he was a newborn, of course. So they were kind of like telling us like, oh, he can't be in the bed with you. But when we would put him in the bassinet, he would throw a fit. So I was like, yeah, no, this isn't working for me. Like, he's unhappy and then I have to put him in a situation that makes me unhappy. So we're just gonna leave. Like, thank you for everything, but we're just gonna go. So, but other than like just an uncomfortable hospital situation, I had the most amazing labor and delivery. I do think that me waiting in the bathtub for a few hours helped. I think it allowed my son to kind of come at his own pace, kind of catch his rhythm. You know, he was able to get all the way to 5 centimeters dilated on his own. So I felt like that's why when it came time for me to push and give him that momentum, he already had his own momentum. Even though we had a little bit of Pitocin, my son had already established his own rhythm of what it meant to bring himself out of the womb. So I really feel like giving him the chance to drop down on his own while I was in the tub helped out a lot. One thing I did forget to say is that my water broke on its own as well. So I didn't have to get my water broken. It broke while I was on the hospital bed. Somewhere after the pain medication. It was very hazy, so I don't remember exactly when. I just remember a ton of fluid coming out of me and the nurse having to change all of my bedding and having to clean all of it up. So yes, my water did break on its own, which was also amazing. And I feel like once again, my son was able to break that water because I waited and kind of allowed him to catch his own rhythm, his own birthing rhythm, and do things a little bit more natural for the first half. So yeah, thank you guys so much for tuning in to my labor and delivery story, and stay tuned for some more videos that I have on the way. Thanks. Bye-bye.